Capital punishment, otherwise known as the death penalty, is the legal authorized killing of somebody for a crime that they have committed. The most commonly used form of the death penalty in the United States is lethal injection, but electrocution, gas chambers, and firing squads have also been used as well. Overall, the death penalty violates the Eighth Amendment, is not a deterrent for crime, and is racially biased. Over the past 409 years, there has been a tendency of death penalty sentences leaning towards minorities.
In comparison to only 7,160 whites. In the words of Justice William O. Douglas, it is the poor, the sick, the ignorant, and the powerless, and the hated who were executed. And these statistics prove that to be very true. Between 1930 and 1960, roughly 55% of the people who were executed were black.
Back over the past 3 centuries, minorities make up 56.5% of all the people executed, as to where whites only make up 43.5%.
While the defendant's social status is an extremely important component in whether or not the death penalty sentence will be given, race is an equally, or if not more, impactful factor.
Just since 1976 alone, 76% of the people whose killer was executed were white, as to where only 24% were minorities.
The statistics pertaining to interracial homicides show that the cases where victims of minority are given heavier sentences versus cases involving a white offender and the murder victim belonging to a minority. Since 1976 alone, where the defender was white and the victim was black, there have only been 20 executions.
On the other hand, when the victim was white and the defendant was black, 288 people have been executed. This disparity in the amount of people who have been executed by looking at their race and the race of the killer and the victim, it is hard to argue that the death penalty does not have a racial bias. To go along with these statistics, it is no surprise that drastically more people have been executed in the South than anywhere else. The death penalty is not a deterrent for crime either. In fact, states with the death penalty consistently have higher murder rates than those without, peaking in 2005 where the gap was 46%.
Out of the 12 remaining states without capital punishment, 10 have homicide rates below the national average, which data from the FBI corroborate. On the other hand, half of the 32 states with the death penalty have murder rates higher than the national average. In a state-by-state analysis, the Time Who used government statistics found that during the last 20 years, the murder rates in the states with the death penalty have been between 48% and 101%, higher than in states without.
The Eighth Amendment of the Constitution protects us from cruel and unusual punishment, but looking at the way the death penalty is imposed and how it is unreliable constitutes it as such. Let's take lethal injection for example, which is the most botched type of execution there is, where a prisoner is strapped to a table and given 3 drugs by way of IV. The first, an anesthetic, which in a recent study, scientists from Florida and Virginia found that 4 out of every 10 inmates gets too small of a dose of anesthesia.
Then there is the gas chamber. Start again. When taking into account the disparity between how many minorities are on death row compared to whites for the same crimes and how painful the methods of execution are, it is hard to argue that the death penalty is constitutional. Kill and be killed, and in other words, an eye for an eye, is something that can be found in Hammurabi's Code, one of the earliest legal systems in the world. In this system, if you killed, you were killed. But this system may have been great back then. The United States will not be able to sustain this.
If the United States had an eye for an eye system in place, it would definitely constitute as cruel and unusual punishment, because then the entire justice system would have to follow an eye for an eye system. If that proved to be the case, every punishment would prove to be cruel and unusual. An example would be if a criminal committed sexual assault, then they would be raped, which definitely constitutes as cruel and unusual punishment.